Ondrej, your mic is off.
Hello, everybody. That's the first thing I was asking, if everybody can hear me, at least one signal.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's jump into it. The topic that I'm going to talk about is cyber threats in these times, these worried times of pandemic, and how to avoid them. So there will be always some nice examples of what we have seen in the wild. And at the end of each section that I will be talking about, I will offer you a few tips or advices that you can follow, and you can diminish the risks that way. My name is Ondrej Kubovič, as you have heard. As a security awareness specialist, my job is to work with the guys in the virus lab, so our analysts who work with the code, with malicious codes, and reverse engineering it. And my job is to explain it in the most humanly understandable way, as they often talk in very specific technical language, and it's hard to understand for many people. So let's go to the topic, to the main topic of this webinar. That's going to be the threats that we have seen during COVID-19 pandemic. I don't need to introduce the situation. I don't need to talk about it too much. But one thing that I would like to point out is the fact that this is a very different crisis from all the crises that we have seen in the past. Even if you compare it to, for example, situation with the Spanish flu at the beginning of 20th century, there was not much information of what's going on, where it's, how the pandemic is evolving and stuff like this. That's a big difference right now. Thanks to internet and a lot of online media, we have tons and tons of information. As you can see, New York Times is sharing a lot of information, Guardian, even German media or Slovak media, everybody is presenting a lot of information. It's good to stick to these, let's say, reliable media houses, so that you have really reliable information about what is going on and what are the advices given by the crisis teams, governments, and health organizations. Another thing that is interesting and that is totally different to the previous times is that you can actually follow real time what is going on as to the statistics. So you can see how many people are infected right now, how many people have passed away during this crisis, as well as how many have already recovered. This is thanks to many sources. One of the most popular ones, Johns Hopkins University. But as I will show you, even this type of information can come bundled with problems. So Johns Hopkins University is a very good source, and if you go to their webpage, it's nice and it's clean information. But if you receive their map in your email, it might mean something totally different. We'll get to that. So what does this crisis have brought us all? First of all, there are limitations to our movements. So we have to stay home. We have to, even our children cannot go to school, and we have to follow strict protocols. That includes also wearing face masks. And for some people, it also included panic buying of toilet paper in shops. But hopefully we are behind that phase, and right now everybody has enough toilet paper at home, and everybody should be well stocked up on similar stuff. And the most important thing, mostly for the companies, big, small, or even enterprises, is the change that there has been movement towards home offices, a mass movement. So millions and millions of new users are using home office or remote work from home, which brings new risks, new tools, new opportunities, and all of this is something that the bad guys are aware of and are trying to take advantage of. How do they do it? They use various tools in their toolkit, for example, social engineering. So they are trying to manipulate, lie, send you disinformation, and just manipulate you into something that is harmful for you, send you malicious links, malicious emails, malicious code, somehow repacked with something good, so that you click on it, install it, and get your device infected. or they are just trying to dupe you into sending them your personal information or credit card details. And that's where I'm just going to start off with the current threats, because scammers, spammers, and phishers are actually always the first ones to jump on the bandwagon. So they are the ones that have been really working this crisis pretty well, because they were creating new emails and new messages, sending it to masses out there, trying to get them to click on something that they don't want to click. What are the most usual or typical topics they are going for? What we have seen in the past few weeks was a remake of the Nigerian prince scams. If you don't know what I mean, Nigerian prince is the guy who has a lot of money and needs to wire it out of the country. Of course, he has some problems or whatever, and that's why he's contacting you and he's going to wire the money to you. Right now, during this COVID crisis, it's not Nigerian princes anymore, but it's WHO, it's your government, it's your healthcare institution, anything that can work for you as a trustworthy source. They are trying to put that in their scam emails and send it to you so that you send them a small advance payment or your details for your bank account. Also, when I'm saying they are trying to replace Nigerian prince with WHO, they are trying to replace or mimic WHO emails big time. So they are sending a lot of emails that are having this logo of the organization. I will also show you a few examples. What is let's say, evergreen at these days is phishing emails, but many of them are coming already with the topic of COVID, but also they are targeting specific businesses. So it's coming to you and the email looks to you as an employee as if it was coming from your colleague, from your boss, from the CEO, for example, or CFO, and they are trying to dupe you into something harmful for your company. Also, a topic that we have seen many times in the last few weeks was a list of ingredients for a homemade vaccine. If you do it, it works for dogs, cats, your kids, yourself. Of course, if you read the reliable media, you know that the vaccine is maybe a year away, or when we are lucky, by the end of the year, we might see some first successful results in this area. So no homemade vaccine that is advised to you by the scammers is not going to work. And of course, threats and extortion, that is something that we have seen many, many times in many different versions in the past few years. I'm going to show you how they have adjusted for this topic. But first, the WHO organization, the mimicking of them. You can see that in this email, they are using the official logo, and even the email is quite neat. It's not much information in there, so they don't make too many mistakes. And there's one big blue button. When you click on it, you will download something that looks like a PDF, but probably it's going to be a malicious executable. Different email here, the sender, Robert Coleman. I don't believe it's coming. The email is coming from him, but he's saying, or he tries to claim that he comes from World Health Organization, and he's sending you some information attached. Again, it's Microsoft Word document attachment. That might mean that it has a malicious macro, so something you click on the top of the document when you open it, and it will download malicious stuff into your computer or your device. I mentioned the extortionists. Usually the emails that we see are coming with the topic of sextortion. So the attacker is claiming he has recorded the victim watching inappropriate content, some pornography or something, and also did a webcam recording of what the user was doing while watching that video or that content. And of course, if the victim doesn't want to pay, he will send the attacker, he will send everything to his family, friends, or his colleagues, which might sound very unpleasant. This topic has been adjusted for this times, so for the pandemic, and the attackers are claiming they will infect users with COVID. Of course, not only the victim, but his whole family, her whole family, which is not really precisely written how the attacker wants to do this. Of course, it would not work, probably because he needs to be in a close physical distance. We have also seen, let's say, they were trying to bridge that division, that space between victim and themselves, and they have claimed they are the neighbor who's infected. So again, this is another option how they are trying to adjust and how they are trying to make it work and scare victims into paying on their Bitcoin addresses. I also mentioned the phishing emails. These two are actually two that we have received in our company. Our users have seen them. I don't want to say I like the one on the right, but the bottom one has link to SharePoint. But if you stand on it with your mouse, the tooltip will show you the real link where it leads. And that's not really a SharePoint of our company. So if you click there, probably there will be a login form or some form of login. You give your credentials, and the attackers gain credentials to your company account. This is something that, of course, can lead to a widespread infection within the company, because even if they could have access to my account, they can spread, for example, infected emails in my name to my colleagues. So it can have really serious consequences for the whole company if similar attacks cannot be countered, or maybe even similar emails are filtered out. As for the advice, what you can do with similar stuff when working for a company or in your own company, first of all, you should train and inform all your employees. And that includes also CEOs, CFOs, chief executives, who often have special privileges or do not follow all the rules. In this time when everybody's working remotely, it's more important than ever that they follow all the rules that all their employees are following. Also, by informing all employees, we mean if a IT department sees an attack or series of emails that is repeating itself and is arriving in inboxes of many people in the company, they should inform everybody that this is happening, because just the awareness about such an attack can be very, very helpful in countering it. So the second thing that any company can do is use reliable security solutions that are able to filter similar content. So if scam, spam, phishing emails are arriving in the inboxes, a solution that is reliable, that has multiple layers, can stop similar emails even from arriving in the inbox. Also, there are additional security layers that can be applied even for smaller or medium companies. I will talk about it a little bit later. A different type of threat that many companies will face is in the form of malware and data stealing. We have seen multiple attacks that were very interesting because they were, for example, trying to misuse exactly the map that I have shown you in the beginning. It's not the same thing. The data is publicly available if you know how to work it, if you know how to access the API that Johns Hopkins University has made public. And the attackers know this, so they have used this API. They have created a kit or package that contains malicious content, but is looking on the outside as this map. So it arrives in your email. It's an executable, you click on it, and when it runs, it shows you this map with actual data, with real-time data, and it works for you. So you might like it, you can even share it with your friends or with your colleagues, and at the same time, you have been infected with Azerult InfoStealer, which is a well-known family, malware family, that is trying to go after your browser cookies, browser history, passwords stored in your browser, or for example, even cryptocurrency information that might be available on your computer. Another evergreen, I would say, similar to the phishing ones, is when the emails are claiming that they come from a parcel service. So somebody is sending you a package. And if you click on the attached document, you will get the details of that package, when it arrives, what's the tracking number, etc., etc. If you look at those files, you can see that in the screenshots, those are executables, which is already a sign that something is not okay. And if you would run them, you would find out that it really wasn't okay to run them because it contained injector or Trojan downloader, which both are, the main purpose is that this is some kind of a middle stage that is downloading other malware to your computer or to your device. Ransomware. We cannot go around this topic even in this time. Interesting thing is that the attackers are still attacking organizations. They didn't put everything to rest, but some of them actually gave out a public pledge, or they published even press releases. This is one of them, where they pledge they will not attack hospitals or medical organizations that are taking care of the people who are infected or who are sick. That is interesting because Maze ransomware as well as doppelpaymer ransomware are known for attacks against the hospitals around the world. So this is something new in their even communication, and it's uncommon that they are pledging not to attack one type of targets. As for example, the Clop, Nephilim, and Netwalker ransomware, they also say they never attack hospitals, but they are not really that welcoming or that peaceful in this time, because they say if it happens, if they infect a hospital not on purpose, they will not provide the decryption keys. So that's the difference against Maze team and doppelpaymer. Those both will provide decryption keys for hospitals if they hit them. Even your Android is not perfectly safe from threats. This is a good example because there is a lot of tracking applications that are published by governments or public institutions to trying to counter the spread of the disease. These applications look trustworthy. They have good, they seem reliable because they come from public authorities, but they can be also downloaded by the attackers and Trojanized, which was exactly this one that I am showing you, the soft mining one that was used in Italy. That was the official application for tracking in Italy. The difference between the original and malicious can be seen in the app permissions. As you can see, the original had a few things that it could be asking for, so some type of information like camera, location, phone. The malicious one was asking for a lot more information. For example, your SMS messages, access to your storage, or even your phone. And of course, location is turned on at the moment of the installation. So they just downloaded the original application, Trojanized it, changed the code, and uploaded it to some of their web pages and started spreading the link. Another one interesting for Android is the coronavirus tracker, which actually was COVID log ransomware. This is interesting because Android ransomware is not a very common thing. We see maybe 1 or 2 cases each year, and this one was very quick to jump on the bandwagon, so just to misuse the pandemic. Of course, it encrypts all your data on the device and you cannot access it. You need to have the key. The funny thing is the attackers were very, very quick in their reaction when putting out this application. The problem is they forgotten the key hard-coded in the code. So if you were infected by this Android ransomware, you only needed to use the key 48650-83501, and you would get all your data back on any device. It was all the same for everybody. Another interesting topic is Internet of Things. Those are devices that we often don't think about as a threat vector or attack vector which can be misused by the attacker to infect us. But this time there was a really emblematic attack seen against D-Link routers. Those devices are always running, always on, and often are not updated, so they are running with known vulnerabilities, which is known to the attackers. And what they did, they hijacked the DNS settings of those routers. What it means, they have changed the address book for the router. So when you write, for example, google.com, you don't go to google.com, the IP that Google uses for this address, but you go to a different one that they have put in your address book under that name. Where you would end up was a page that was looking like this. It was claiming again that it's coming from World Health Organization, and it was offering you to install an app that will give you latest information about the pandemic. If you clicked, there was a wide variety of malware that you could have downloaded in your computer. For example, OSCI InfoStealer, which was similar to Azorult, also going after information that is stored in your browser. It could be injectors, such as Injector Algo, which would download another password stealer. Downloaders, which would download spyware that was spying on you, for example, trying to steal control of your camera or different other features on your computer. And the worst case scenario, of course, ransomware was also present. We were testing this domain. Of course, we were blocking it, but we were testing it in the lab to see what kind of malware was coming from there. And the payloads have been changing quite a bit. Every few hours, we have seen a different type of malware. That's why I'm already offering you a list of maybe 4 or 5 of them that we have been able to see. Maybe our guess was that every few hours they have changed the malware family, but also there are other attacks where the attackers were able to check or scan your device and find out which type of malware would be the most suiting for you. So if you have something interesting for them information-wise, they will infect you with InfoStealer. If you have just valuable data for yourself, they will go for ransomware because that's something that can earn them the most money. And of course, it's not a taboo to misuse pandemic also for the cyber espionage groups, those that are the most advanced, the most sophisticated, using the most advanced tools, skilled coders. These attackers have been seen to do multiple campaigns. Some of them were originating probably in North Korea even. One that stood out because it was quite complex was in Ukraine. It was orchestrated by Hades Group, which is linked to SEDNIT. If you don't know SEDNIT, those are the guys that were behind the attack on DNC, Democratic National Convention, before US elections. So these guys are really top of the top when it comes to the skills. They have spread disinformation, a lot of disinformation in Ukraine. And thanks to that, they were able to land one that was very interesting for many people. It happened at the beginning of the pandemic where everybody was scared of what's coming, how the states are going to react. And when the first people who were going for quarantine, only quarantine, so they were probably not even infected, they were scared of these people so that they will spread the infection. What happened? People got scared, went into the streets, started blocking the convoys, even clashed with the police. There was a lot of chaos, a lot of violence in the streets just because of that disinformation spread by the attackers. But what does it have together with what they usually do, cyber espionage? Making something like this or causing chaos of this proportion is very good for them because that's a good cover. They can spread spear phishing emails or stuff that it can gain them access to sensitive systems in companies or organizations, state, government, army, anything that's interesting for them at that point. And in the fact that the police is busy with something or that the army is busy with dealing with the problems in the street, they might be a little less vigilant and can click or can download, do the wrong step when the spear phishing email arrives. So it's when we are talking about stopping similar attacks such as malware, but even these more sophisticated attackers, what are the steps that you can take as a company? First of all, you should run updated operating systems, applications on all devices. This includes also mobile devices, which are often forgotten. And it also includes the IoT devices that are at home of your employees. So I'm going to get to that later on when we are talking about IoT a little bit deeper. Also, you should make employees aware of the current attack techniques. Again, when you see a lot of emails that are trying to spread infected malicious attachments, something that should be told to your employees so they know that something like this is happening. Reliable security solution with multiple layers is able to stop malware on different levels. This is very important because you can stop it on the network level, so it won't even penetrate your network. You can stop it in your email if the layer is there. You can stop it at the moment when it's trying to encrypt something. There are multiple steps that malware needs to take until it can do its malicious deed. And security solution with enough technology in it, with multiple layers, is able to stop similar attacks. And again, I'm getting to the additional security layers. I'm going to mention it at the end again. Okay, those were mostly threats that we have seen that might be interesting, that is something that is good to know so that you can avoid them. But of course, there are maybe hidden risks that you can run into during the home office time, because there are a lot of new tools that people are using, and they often forget that these new tools bring new maybe doors or avenues for the attackers that can be misused. One, I'm just showing this as an example. I don't want to say that Zoom is a problem as itself. There are multiple platforms that are being used for the teleconferencing and meetings and sharing of information, but Zoom really stands out. It stands out for the good reasons and for the bad reasons. For the good, because it's easy to use, it's easy to install. Users only need to click on one link and everything runs smoothly. The sound quality is good, the video quality is good. But at that point, you find out, okay, you have the usability, you have something that is really helping you to make your company work on a normal level. But the problem is that Zoom had also quite a few vulnerabilities and privacy issues. So, and that's not all. Of course, there were new types of attacks that came to be because of the popularity of the platform. Because when so many companies and so many schools have jumped on this system, on this teleconferencing tool, the attackers saw a new attack surface. They saw that there's a lot of people working on this platform, and maybe we can get into the sensitive meetings, maybe we can disrupt something. So it was interesting for them. And vulnerabilities are a great way to get into those things. So they can, for example, spread links, malicious links that will appear in your chat, and you only click on them. At that moment, Zoom is running them, and they get installed. So they can use it for spreading malware. Zoom bombing, that was something really new. The attackers were able to find the IDs or the Zoom sessions, the links for the sessions, and to connect to them, disrupting usually the normal work of things. So for example, for classes, for schools, they were trying to connect and scream some nonsense in there or hateful speech. They have, for example, disclosed the private address of the teacher, stuff like this. So they were trying to disrupt. But for me, or for a company, much bigger risk is when the attackers connect silently to your meeting, and when they can listen to what you are talking about, especially if you have special know-how, if you're working with new technology, or you have access to some intellectual property, something that is very interesting for them to sell on black market. Privacy issues, I'm just going to jump back to that for a bit in the next slide. Stolen credentials as well. At the end of this section, I'm also going to show you how to maybe increase security of this platform, and give you also some tips for other platforms that might work as well. For the privacy issues, there has been a long list of things that have been said about Zoom and its approach to privacy. First of all, they had problems with oversharing of information. For example, if you are using iOS and you were using it at the beginning of the year, your data was probably shared with Facebook. This is interesting because it should not happen, and it was stated nowhere that this type of data sharing is occurring in the background. Also, they were promising end-to-end encryption, something that the technical people already understand as communication between two parties, and the full length of the communications is encrypted. This is not really true. They even came forward and apologized for this, because for them internally, they understood that if the call is going over TLS, which is encryption on the level, for example, if you go on a web page, HTTPS, it's the same thing. It's the same type of encryption they were using for their protection of the calls. But this is not end-to-end. This goes only between you to the page, then there is some middleman, and then again, it goes from the page to the recipient of the call. So it's not perfect. And there were also other things, such as the magical ability to escalate privileges on Mac. So you didn't even need to confirm you want to install. It just ran through when you clicked on the link. Something that should not be happening, because Mac is known for having the security pretty tight on this point. And there were also others. So if you want to see the full list, you just need to Google it. And I think you will see so many articles right now that you won't even have time to read them all. Another thing were the vulnerabilities. The one that I told you about in the beginning was probably one of the worst ones. It allowed the attacker to join the call, send a link, and that link would automatically execute on the device of the victims. So it didn't need too much interaction with the victim. You can check similar stuff on the pages of MITRE, for example. It's called CVEs. This is a database of vulnerabilities. You can even see a score for those vulnerabilities on the page. The one that has 10, that was really, really scary. That happened in 2004. So even though Zoom became popular in the last few weeks, it has been around for quite some time. Zoom bombing, that's something that I already talked about, so I'm not going to go into details. Just one interesting fact on the side. FBI even found it so disturbing that they put out a warning for it. What is interesting is that with the popularity, Zoom became popular also amongst the attackers, and they started to spread fake links for Zoom sessions. This is something that when you click on it, it looks like it's coming from Zoom or somebody's trying to contact you via Zoom. But of course, you will join a malicious session, or even not a session, but you will join or go to a web page that is going to spread malware. Also, another thing that has been seen, that this has been seen on dark web or black market, if you will. There has been a lot of contact information or credentials being sold on black market. Actually, one of the data sets was as big as 530,000 credentials, access credentials for Zoom accounts. These go very cheaply. Those over half a million of contacts went for less than a penny per each account. So it cost them less than 1 cent per account to get access, which is quite disturbing, as there were many big companies in the list. For example, Chase Bank, Citibank, educational institutions, universities, etc., etc. So something that can be very problematic. How can you secure your Zoom meeting? First of all, similar to social networks and Facebook, you should lock your meetings, make them private, not accessible to everybody. And this is very important, especially when you are inviting people by copying the link and sending it to them. Always send it through secure channels, such as end-to-end encrypted platforms, or for example, inner company email should be fine too. But don't publish those links anywhere on the web page or your Facebook or anywhere else. Also, one good feature that's also available on Teams too. You might have seen that when you were connected to this webinar. Here it's called lobby. In Zoom's case, it's called waiting room, where the host of the event or of the webinar presentation meeting is the one who can decide who can be connected or cannot be connected. This way you can, for internal or sensitive meetings, you can choose who are the attendees that should be there. Also, you can limit features. So of course, chat or share screen is nice, but especially microphones and, for example, renaming of your profile. those are things that can be quite nasty if they end up in the wrong hands. And of course, nice feature, if necessary, you can also remove unruly participants as a user, as the host. But as I said in the beginning, it's not only about Zoom. Zoom is a nice platform that works well, it's user-friendly, but for other platforms, most of those rules apply as well. For example, you can use only the supported and updated version. This is something very important because the security issues that were found also in Zoom and others are fixed quite quickly in a matter of weeks. But if you don't have installed the latest version, you won't get them. So it's important to download the latest version and keep it updated. Also, you can check for CVEs. Two good sources are Maitre or NIST. But if you write CVE in your Google, it will give you mostly these two lists in the top positions. Also, be aware of the threats such as Zoom bombing, or for example, be aware that anybody can be listening to you on that call, and do not overshare or share too sensitive information on a platform that is not completely under your control or control of your organization. One more thing that I would like to talk about is from the space of IoT, Internet of Things, and that is Crook vulnerability. It's a nice example of how important it is to keep updated not just your computer, your phone, or maybe tablet, but also other things that are connected in your home. So for example, if you have a smart vacuum cleaner, if you have a smart TV, if you have router, which you probably have when you have internet connection, you should also update those regularly. Maybe at least once a year, but if you are able to do it more often, do it often, or set it to automated updates.
So Ondrej, how can my vacuum cleaner get misused?
Your vacuum cleaner is actually connected to your household, so to your household network. And if it's vulnerable, maybe it can offer a new way how to access that network. And inside the network, for example, when you are communicating with your router, you usually don't use even HTTPS connections, only HTTP. So the attacker, if he's already in the network through your vacuum cleaner, which you can control on your phone, and even if you're not at home, he can, for example, change settings of your router, or he can change stuff on your network and disconnect your company computer if he wants to. So there are a lot of ways he can disrupt your work or steal your information. Of course. Yes? Was there a question, or should I go?
There actually was a question regarding Zoom, and Ernest is asking why Zoom is still the case. All of the top vendors, Cisco, Microsoft, etc., are patching probably on weekly basis. None of them can regularly handle such a growth of a video cloud service penetration. So why Zoom is still the case?
Zoom, as I said on the beginning, Zoom, I have also picked it for this presentation because it has seen this popular growth. And they have also pledged to devote all their developers to fixing those security issues. But if you can see that, for example, Google or Microsoft, they are working on their platforms for years, and they have been developing them and keeping them updated and secure. Not saying that they didn't have vulnerabilities, they had, but thanks to this regular patching, it was fixed quite quickly. In Zoom's case, they are just unlucky because they are so popular and so many people are writing about them that for media, it's interesting to see if somebody comes up with a new vulnerability. Maybe at the same time, MS Teams had 5 other vulnerabilities found, but nobody was writing about them because Zoom was the more interesting thing for media. So that would be my guess how it went down. Okay, so
if there are any more questions, please just put them in the Teams chat, and we will be asking Ondrej towards the end.
Okay, moving on. The Crook vulnerability. I will show you how interesting it can get because we have a IoT research that we are looking into different household items that you can have home. For example, Amazon Echo, your reader, that is Kindle, for example, Amazon Kindle, or your iPhone or your Samsung Galaxy, for example, how they can be the avenue or the way how the attackers get into your Wi-Fi or into your network. It is due to Wi-Fi chips, because these Wi-Fi chips are built into most of the smart devices that are connected to the internet. It's very small. This is what I'm holding in my hand. That's Amazon Kindle taken apart, and the chip that is there, I have a more detailed photo of it, is a Wi-Fi chip that was built by Broadcom, which is a big Chinese company, or actually I think maybe they are American, but partly Chinese with the manufacturing, that is building a big chunk of all Wi-Fi chips that are being used around the world. And this chip, together with another set of chips by Cypress, which is a different company, but doing basically the same thing for IoTs, were vulnerable to a specific attack that we have found. How it worked. Before we can get to that, first of all, you need to understand when you are connected to your Wi-Fi, that's your phone, that's your router or Wi-Fi modem, the data is traveling between those two devices encrypted. Those packets, that's basically how it's separated. Each data is separated into different packets, and there are also some management packets. So it's different stuff that's being sent between those two devices. It's protected. Even if somebody encounters them, it's hard to decrypt because they are using specific set of keys they agreed on and cannot misuse it in any way. What we have found was that the attacker was able to disrupt this type of exchange, data exchange, by triggering so-called disassociation. Disassociations happen when, for example, you're on a conference and you are moving from one room to a different room. You are connecting to different access points. So there are different routers in each room. And when you reconnect to a different one, you need to do this disassociation. So it's a natural thing that is happening. It's part of the design, and it should work this way. But the attacker can trigger it maliciously by sending one packet that you have seen before. And at the end, there is a little bit of data that was kept stored in your phone, in the Wi-Fi chip. And that one is not encrypted properly, but only with a key that contains only zeros. This means it's very easy to decrypt for the attacker. And by doing similar attacks, so sending the disassociation or causing the disassociation, they can get the data, even data streams. So a lot of information, for example, it can contain for your password or your credentials for your internet banking, and unpack it because it's not encrypted properly. The bad news is this was not only going for the mobile phones or the devices that you are holding in your hand or working on when you have them on your table, but it was also happening in case of the access points. So the attackers could attack any insecure, vulnerable device in the network, as well as the central piece of the network, which is the access point. In that case, of course, they would not get the same type of information. For example, the router is not sending your passwords back to your device, but is actually sending, for example, DNS, the thing that I was talking before about the address book or translation of the IP address. So similar information can be acquired by the attackers when they trigger these disassociations. And the big news at the end, I already told you that the devices that were affected were using Wi-Fi chips from Broadcom and Cypress, which didn't say much for you as a user or even as an owner of the company, because you don't know which chips are installed in your phone or your computer. The bad news was that when we were testing this in the lab, we found out that multiple versions, or if you want, rows of iPhones, MacBooks, even Samsung Galaxy or Google Nexus phones were vulnerable to this problem. Also, Xiaomi Redmi phones have been found vulnerable. Interesting, we have also tested the APs, those access points. That's, for example, Asus and Huawei. and we even tested home assistant, Alexa. Maybe you know this name, but that's actually the hardware is called Amazon Echo, and Amazon Echo was vulnerable as well. When you only count together the numbers, known numbers for these devices, you get to a number that is about 1 billion plus. But that's very conservative. We didn't want to overblow this from beyond proportion, but probably it has affected billions of devices. The good news is on this that we have found the vulnerability. We have reported this to Broadcom and Cypress. They have fixed it. It took them more than half a year to come up with the fix and distribute it to Apple, Amazon, Google, Xiaomi, and others. And the patching process is still ongoing. So this is just a good example how patching your IoT devices can be crucial, because it will give the attackers new attack surface if something like this is publicly known and it's not fixed.
Ondrej, there were some concerns that many of the vulnerabilities in the China manufactured chips might have been intentional. Is there any truth to that?
It's hard to say. We don't see into the heads of the designers of those chips or devices. So I would just say there have been a lot of IoT devices that were vulnerable or problematic coming from the Chinese manufacturing, but often it was not. I would say in most cases, it's really not intentional. It's something that happens not on purpose, but because of the hardware designers not being skilled enough, or just copying some other design from other manufacturers and not thinking about security in that process. So if you buy a cheap IP camera that has been built by some no-name company, you will probably get something that is more vulnerable when as compared to, for example, D-Link camera, which will be probably patched and taken care of by D-Link. So that's the place where we should be in this discussion. I don't think it borders on conspiracy theories that those things were intentional. Okay, I only have one section of my presentation left, and that's the takeaways. I'm just going to repeat a lot of stuff that I told you about, and also explain a little bit more about some of the solutions that we have. First of all, in general, what you should do as a company in this time, and in the time of pandemic, first of all, make sure that there's physical security for all the devices that your employees are using. By this, we don't mean only that the employees should lock their doors and keep their stuff inside, but even for example, when they want to go work outside and they create a hotspot on their phone, they should have the computer protected by, for example, encryption. So if somebody snatches the phone or somebody snatches the computer, okay, you lose the hardware, but the data on it is protected by this solution. Also, ensure network security. For this, we would recommend companies use VPNs. That means virtual private networks. You can create an encrypted tunnel between the device of your employee and the company systems. That way, even if somebody is able to ram into that communication, they won't get the information that is going on because it's encrypted. Important thing, it's old as the whole cybersecurity itself, enforce unique and strong passwords. It's hard to do, I know, because we have many passwords. I personally have around 200 or something like that. For that, I would advise people to use password managers. Here, you have at least another layer of protection. You have it protected by one strong password. You don't have to remember those passwords. And they even use encryption for those things stored in the database. Also, good thing to do, add multi-factor authentication or additional factors. That means like push notification when somebody's connecting to an internal system, or for example, using an application where they can confirm it's them who's connecting. Update all operating system softwares and applications on all devices, including IoT. Choose remote tools wisely. It's an easy thing to say and hard thing to do, or difficult thing to do. We know, but still you can decide to go for solution that is paid, that you have fully under your control, is running on your servers, and you don't have to rely on some other vendor providing you the services on a safe level. So you don't have to go through, for example, their servers. You can use your own servers. Also, use reliable multi-layered security solutions and train your employees. Also, when I'm saying inform, I'm adding one more thing. It's nice to give your employees at this time a list of things they should do in case there is an incident. Have you received a phishing email or spam email or scam email? Send it please to this guy in the company who can take a look. Maybe he will get many emails like this, and he will know there is a concentrated attack on our company. Also, similarly, when my computer gets encrypted, what should I do? Should I disconnect it? Should I contact somebody? Should I call the security vendor, or should IT handle it? Many people don't know these rules, so it's good to remind them of the policies. When I'm talking about reliable and multi-layered security solution, of course, I'm coming from ESET, and I'm talking mostly about what our approach to security is. So multi-layered security solution is a different word for what we are building in our lab, and that's called ESET Endpoint Protection. That's for the companies. And also we have additional solutions or tools that you can add to that to increase your security. First of all, I was already mentioning encryption, but also secure authentication in the form of another factor. That can be very easy to use, especially when the solution that you are using allows for push authentications. That means you don't have to open some application, find a code, write it on the computer, but you only take your phone, click on one thing on your device, and you are in. So it's quite easy, quite user-friendly, easy to roll out. So it should be very effective and increases your security on a very significantly. That's the word I was looking for. It increases the security significantly. Even if the users are going for weak passwords, this is something that can significantly help. And the dynamic threat defense, that's one thing that I have been mentioning throughout the presentation. We have a solution that is good for companies that are of a bigger size, so at least 100 endpoints or 100 computers, devices that are running our solution. This allows the attackers, the defenders actually, to identify threats without them even entering your network or even landing in the inboxes of your users. How it works, it arrives at the server that is set up for this, and the information about the email is sent to our systems that are called ESET Dynamic Threat Defense. This is basically a virtual space, or virtual and physical space, that we have created, where we try to run everything that's in that email. For example, if it's something that is suspicious, we try to run it on different systems, and we see that it's ransomware. We're just not going to let that message go through. We will just throw it away, or we just send you a notification, depends on the setting that the administrator will choose. As I said before, the limitation is this is a solution that is good for companies with 100 plus endpoints, and also they need to run at least endpoint protection version 7, which is one of the latest of our endpoint products. So this is two limitations that we need to keep in mind.
Ondrej, I'm afraid we have run out of time at this point.
I only have 2 more slides, so I can just wrap it up quickly. What can employees do? Ensure physical security, update their devices, use strong passwords, and stay home and healthy. And if you want to read more about those vulnerabilities or some other advice, for example, how to secure remote access, you can just scan those QR codes and you get to our papers. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry if it took too long.
That's totally fine, Ondrej. Thank you very much for a great presentation. There is still one question from our viewers, and that is, could malware be automatically, without clicking anything or something, downloaded to my smart TV or vacuum cleaner and so on, and later on transferred to my mobile phone?
We have I'm confident to say that we have never seen an attack that worked that way. Right now, the attackers are still, let's say, trying to find out how to exactly misuse the IoTs, but we already see attempts to misuse them. So I would be very wary when using IoTs at home to having like a big smart home using a lot of cheap devices. Right now, I don't think there is a malware that will get installed in your device and spread through the whole network through your IoT device. But we have seen, as the D-Link shows, the router, the attackers are able to infect your device without you doing anything.
That is indeed scary. And would you say that the attacks have increased during the time of pandemic, or have they stayed the same, about the same?
The interesting thing is that we don't see as many attacks as we have seen before, but we see more targeted attacks that are trying to misuse the situation. So they are using the topic and they are trying to misuse the fact that people on home offices are less vigilant. So that's what I would end up with. But the attacks are basically steady or a little bit decreasing.
Okay, thank you very much, Ondrej. I'm afraid with that we have to wrap it up. Thank you very much to all of our viewers and listeners for spending the last hour with AmCham Slovakia and ESET, myself, Martin Mudrak, and Ondrej. With that, I would like to say thank you and have a great rest of the day. We're looking forward to hearing you and seeing you at our next webinars coming soon. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.